several days. يعني الحمد لله.
الحمد لله. الله يبارك فيك يا رب ويبارك في الوقت.
All right, so Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. So, we will be continuing, inshallah. Let's just look into what we were doing first and then just make sure that we're on the same page, right? So, we were doing the financial rights for the wife, and this is where we pretty much left off at. We were talking about the woman's rights for nafaqah, and we said the nafaqah piece of it is different than the mut'a because the nafaqa, or we're speaking about, in other words, the daily maintenance while she is within the marriage. We're not here talking about somewhat of an alimony or due to a divorce or anything of that sort. No, this is actually talking about maintenance during the marriage. We talked about the definition of it and what that really entails. And we also talked about the different types of maintenance, whether we're speaking about food or we're talking about, different drinks, or we're talking about clothing, we're talking about housing, we're talking about beautification and all those different cosmetic things. And we talked about some of those details. We also talked about how to give that money. Is it supposed to be as something that she would take the money as like a monthly type of an allowance? Or is this to be something that he would probably buy or he would probably provide? And then she would basically get to have those things basically available to her. So we talked about that in detail as well. We also talked about when does this maintenance actually start. We also talked about the working women and whether they also get to have that provision, or at least that maintenance covered by 100%, or is it by a lesser percent? So we went in details with that piece of it. And of course, we went into even talking about some details, but we still said that we were going to add some more details, so we'll be talking about that as well. And we also talked about the Zawja Nishes, which basically is the woman that was going against her husband's orders, or is it? And what really determines that? So we did go into all the different details in that regards. And we also talked about what is the area that is to be considered in nafaqah, meaning we're talking about who is to be considered. Is it going to be considered based on the husband's status, or is it based on the wife's status, or whose status really is to be considered in that regards? We went in details with that one, but I thought that there were some things that we still didn't really continue in talking about in relating to this topic. So inshallah, we're going to be talking about that right now. Let's see right there. So the first one is that when we're speaking about nafaqah in general, or we're speaking about that maintenance in general, what we're going to be considering is al-ma'ruf. And we always say, al-ma'ruf really, it really is dependent on two things. Number one is the societal norms, and two, we're speaking about generally like a general piety, like righteousness, integrity. So we're looking at that as well. And when we speak about these two factors, that's where relativism can sometimes, really act as a very major thing and a major dispute between the husband and wife. Because it's so easy to say, okay, this is the societal norm. And, in talking about a fridge or probably talking about a stove, certainly we can all agree that having a stove and a fridge and perhaps maybe a washing machine, etc. All of these different things, is probably something that right now we pretty much agree during our modern times. But when we speak about other things that can be a place of debate, uh, things such as, well, is a dryer included? Is perhaps maybe a microwave included? What about a dishwasher? What about for perhaps her own car? they only have one car. But what if she said, I want my own car? I want my own mean of transportation. Does she have the right to do that or not? And that's that area of that ma'ruf, that societal norm. That's that area of dispute. And that's why it's important to discuss these matters. But no matter how much you discuss them, you're still going to come across this wall of how, I guess, his own personal definition looks like. It doesn't have to be always as as detailed as you might say. Well, I would get phone calls of people asking me, well, what does Islam say about this? And I would say, well, Islam doesn't necessarily have a specific answer for each and every single detail. There are certain details that are left for the society, that are left for the people to determine themselves. But let's just say we speak about society. No, even within the society, you can have different cultures as well. You can have different cultures, you can have different visions, you can have different practices, even though they might be sharing one space, one, perhaps maybe even one tribe, but you will have different personalities that may interpret things in a different way from one person to another. So in that situation, you could say the Prophet ﷺ, when Hind bint Utbah, who's actually Abu Sufyan's wife, she came to the Prophet ﷺ complaining about his stinginess, complaining that he was rather a very stingy person, very selfish, etc. And the Prophet ﷺ tells her, خُذِي مَا يَكْفِيكِ وَلَدَكِ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. Take what is enough for you and your children, but بالمعروف. And you could see right there when we say بالمعروف, and that is sometimes perhaps maybe a little ambiguous. Is this talking about based on her terms of maruf or based on the society's terms? But of course, that kind of leaves it within the area of relativism. So what you might consider as a wife that, I'm just doing it within the space or within the parameter of what is needed. Okay. And certainly you can go grocery shopping for $100 and you can go grocery shopping for perhaps maybe $300, and one family will say, well, all of this is necessary, and the other family will say, well, sorry, but no, this is not necessary. And we can actually, be more economical and just grocery shop for $100. At least, of course, I'm talking about US budget right here, because for somebody that is in India, they're like $100. What are you talking about? Okay. But I'm talking about a US budget here. Okay. So a US budget, yes, $100, you're basically barely buying your necessary items. That's how expensive things are in the US. Okay. But in India, $100 is way too high, and that's probably enough for probably maybe 2 to 3 weeks, right? So, I'm just talking about a situation in America. Okay, in fact, even probably more. Okay, so let's see. And of course, when we're speaking about bil ma'ruf, we're talking about people going in, different circumstances, and certainly women having different needs and families having different needs. If he's married to more than one, of course, the family that probably is full of toddlers is completely different than a family that probably has teenage boys in it. They're completely at a different need and so forth. So in that situation, when we speak about Sarakhsi, he basically said, who's Sarakhsi? Sarakhsi is Shamsuddin Sarakhsi. He basically is a Hanafi madhab. And here's the quote that he said. He said, the amount that would be considered as the reference is basically what is completing the necessity. And we talked about these different areas of considering the darurat, considering the main necessary things, and then the second stage, which basically is considered as the needs, and then the third stage is the wants. So when we look at il-kifaya, we're talking about the needs, we're talking about the necessity and also the needs. So in that situation, we look at ما فوق التقدير ودون الإسراف. What would be beyond being too stingy and what is a little less than overspending. And of course, the scholars actually had a huge debate and they debated what and the amount and all of that, but really there's no limit to the maximum, and there's no necessarily, perhaps maybe a limit to say, well, here's that fine line. But in general, we would say that لا تقتير ولا إسراف. That it's not supposed to be extremely to the limit, and it's not supposed to be way beyond the limit. So in that situation, we would look at the darura and really how important is this. And then, of course, at the end, the woman herself should be that, I would say, that person that has the integrity to recognize really how important is this. Can we reduce the budget? But let's just say she says, I know he's got the money, but he just doesn't want to spend on this area. You want to remember that people have different barometers, or people have different, I guess, definitions of how they want to do their money management. And we talked about this before. Somebody might say, well, spending it on food with this amount of money is really a waste of money. Someone else might say, well, no, it doesn't have to be considered a waste of money, but it is a necessity that we're basically considering perhaps maybe to cover the needs, and what is a need for her might not be a need for him. This might be extra for him. Okay, and we talked about the different name brands and what one might consider, etc. So disputes usually happen within this area. So the best thing that we can do is really say, is it something that you're capable of handling? I'm talking to the wife here and to the husband as well. Is this something that you're capable of compromising? Can we agree on the amount of compromise? We can use different methods. We can use method A. Hey, this is how much we're spending on, let's say, food. This is how much we're spending on cosmetics. This is how much we're spending on, other miscellaneous items. And then this is how much my income is. And then therefore, we also need to do some savings. And in other words, let her understand what we're talking about. Sometimes, um, bring that to her attention can sometimes help, but of course, sometimes, especially if somebody never had a working experience before, they may not fully understand what it means that you have to have a certain amount of savings for those unexpected times, because if there is no one to support us, then we have to basically have some savings on a side to basically support us when those unexpected things do happen. And that way, our dignity is basically dependent on some of those savings that we put on a side. And this is extremely important. I would say I would find more men. That doesn't always mean every man is like that, but I find more men considering, I guess, looking ahead and thinking that, we need to save this much, or we need to get this amount of money to be saved or invested in order to let it at least help us in those unexpected moments. That doesn't necessarily mean that all men are like that. I've had many, many cases that women were the ones that were really good at money management, and women being, let me say, more, what is the word that I could use, but uh, wiser, at least, in their money management than men. So it doesn't mean that all men are like that, but this is to let you know that, I've had more women that are unaware of what it means to do that money management and to actually save than men. But of course, from one culture to another, it may differ. And certainly, in the US, we have more working women there. So in the US, we might actually have more women that understand the importance of money management than actually men. I've had that, something that was very common in the US, but when I was teaching in Palestine, the other situation was actually, or the working women were way less, and women understanding the importance of, staying within budget was definitely not understood as much as the women that were working, and they understood budget and they understood the importance of it a lot more. So again, we can have different experiences, but at the end of the day, I would say communicating this between the couple is important, because when you communicate it, you let the person understand and be with you on the same boat, to understand that I am not trying to be selfish here, but here's what we're trying to do. And this is extremely important, to communicate between the husband and the wife, because it lets any ill intention, I guess, be eliminated. We usually have, I guess, these ill intentions coming in and shaitan becoming the main factor player right there, and the main player. And then you start thinking ill of him, and he starts thinking ill of you, that you're not considering his intention that he's trying to save for these unexpected moments. And she also would have these intentions that, oh, he's just being stingy. He's probably planning something ahead, or who knows what he's looking for, and all of that. And then we go into, I guess, interpreting our own intentions. And that acts as one of the key reasons to a lot of the dispute between the husband and the wife. So at the end of the day, what I would recommend is communicating together these finances, the money management, and what you're really trying to do. And the second that we start thinking ill of the other person's motives, that's when we start basically having the shaitan come in to interpret these motives, to interpret these intentions, and then we start feeling insecure. And I would like to say that sometimes the other person may have the right to feel insecure, because indeed they had different experiences where this person was really lacking integrity, and that this person really cheated. I don't mean by cheated in relationship, but I mean at least they probably, went and took that money. You thought that they were saving it for this, but they ended up really saving it because they wanted to upgrade to a car that they can't even afford, or he probably, or she probably maybe wanted to buy perhaps maybe this very fashionable dress to basically fit in with her friends and to show it off, or probably buy, these cosmetic items or whatever it is. And then, of course, they end up really, not trusting one another because you basically had lied about it. And of course, we have to make sure that honesty is key in every single relationship. Honesty, being truthful, being trustworthy is the key, and again, is the main key to a successful marriage. When we speak of sidq, honesty is the key thing. Once lies, lack of integrity, once the other person is basically not being transparent, that's when you can guarantee that you had stepped the first foot into the failure of this relationship. that's when you can guarantee it. Why? Because the other person is going to feel that they cannot feel secure with you, whether it's a male or a female. Once they start feeling insecure, that's when they start basically, one, trying to go left and right with what is the motive? What is the intention? What next? And guess what's going to happen? Then they will start to do the same because they would feel that if you are playing the game of being sneaky and thinking that you're being slick, then the other person is going to play the same game. You mirror the people that are around you. They're going to start playing the same game because they feel that in order to secure themselves, that they need to be slick, because the second that they're transparent with you, you are abusing that, and then they basically start playing the same exact game. And once the husband and wife are playing the same game of covering and hiding and, being lacking transparency and being basically that person that needs to lie about what they are really up to and what they're really doing, then that's when you can guarantee that this relationship will break sooner or later. This relationship, it is inevitable, but it will break. If it doesn't break, it will at least get into all these moments that you will see those cracks here and there. And with these cracks here and there, that this will actually make the relationship always going through different earthquakes, different quakes, different trembling moments, because it really contained a lot of its history was really based on these cracks here and there. And then no matter how much glue you probably wanted to put in, this glue is not going to amend it because it's too many. There are too many. There were too many cracks, and these too many cracks, it basically, we would say, اتسع الخرق على الراقع. It becomes, exactly like if you were to have a quilt, and this quilt needed a patch here and needed a patch there, and then every single time you basically say, take it to the tailor, and that's what اتسع الخرق على الراقع means. That the patches had been too many, that it became impossible for that tailor to fix it. It became too impossible for the tailor to fix it because it became too many patches, that it was going to be impossible to basically keep this garment together. And what I mean by garment, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala basically had said, هن لباس لكم وأنتم لباس لهن. They're garments to you and you're garments to them. But if this garment had too many patches to fix and too many patches to try to connect together, you're going to see that it's at one point, this libas is not going to be a libas anymore, but we're trying to just use anything to cover ourselves with, but it's not going to work. So that's why it's really important to keep in mind that a sidq is basically the key thing. Even when we're talking about finances and how we understand finances, it's very important to remember working together in communicating what we're up to, what we have, and the amount of money, and what we're spending, and making and creating a team. And at the same time, compromise is extremely important. What could be important to her may not be important to you, but at the same time, sometimes you just have to give in. You have to give in, and definitely she also has to give in. And the second that they start not wanting to compromise and wanting to deal with one another with a very fine line, nope, I'm not going to let go of this and I'm not going to let go of that, you're basically risking or jeopardizing your marriage. Whether we're speaking about the husband or the wife, it's extremely important to remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had said to the people that are getting divorced. He said, وَلَا تَنْسَوُا الْفَضْلَ بَيْنَكُمْ. Because the second that we forget what the other person had probably compromised without you knowing, and the second that you are needing to always brag about what you had done, it becomes dangerous. Let me explain one thing. It's very common that perhaps a woman or a man, it's extremely disgusting if a man were to brag, I'm paying this for you and I'm doing that for you and etc. All these kind of things. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the ayah, in Surah Al-Baqarah, that لا ولا تبطلوا صدقاتكم بالمن والأذى. إبطال الصدقة. This is a sadaqah. Definitely. The best sadaqah is putting a morsel of food in your wife's mouth. And the same thing for a woman. The best sadaqah is the service that you would actually do within your home and to your husband. That's the best sadaqah. All right. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَلَا تُبْطِلُوا صَدَقَاتِكُم. Do not void whatever investment, whatever donation, whatever compromise that you had done. بِالْمَنْ أو الْأَذَى. What is ilman? Ilman is bragging. What is bragging? Bragging is reminding the other person that you had done something good for them, and therefore the inference is to let them know, then therefore you owe it to me. Then therefore there's no way that you can compensate me for what I had done to you. And the second that the husband and wife are basically dealing with each other with this type of men. I had done this to you. Remember I had done this. And remember when I did this, why did you forget about it? Why did this? The second that they deal with each other or sometimes forcing the other that I have to say it because they won't even recognize it. That is a dangerous thing. And one thing, what we would see in the hadith, that women are more likely to forget the things and the investment that was done to her. This is not me claiming or me being misogynist or anything of that sort, but this is the hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said, رَأَيْتُكُنَّ أَكْثَرَ أَهْلِ النَّارِ. I had seen most of the dwellers of hellfire from women. Why? تكثرن اللعن وتكفرن العشير. You would complain. تكثرن اللعن is to complain, overly complain, and also damning things. It's basically having this eye. And there is a relationship, by the way. The frontal lobe in women is bigger than men. And I was watching this Dr. Daniel Amen, and he was talking about why women go through, I love watching his podcasts and his lectures. He does an outstanding job. He's a psychiatrist and also had done all these scans on brains and all of that. Very, very interesting information. But he does say that women are more susceptible to depression due to a number of different reasons, whether it's in the cortisol or whether it's in just different things in the brain. I'm not, a health professional, so I'm not going to be going within that area. But the Prophet ﷺ was also letting us know that at least in behavior that we could see it. He said, تُكْثِرْنَ اللَّعْنَ. You basically see things with a negative eye, and this negative eye basically makes you complain about everything because you will basically be blinded from seeing the good things. تَكْفُرْنَ الْعَشِيرَ. Well, you're not only blinded from seeing all the different, I guess, good things and the blessings that are around you, but you will also fail to see whatever investment, whatever services, whatever good people had done to you. So whether that was a girl, unmarried, probably seeing that her mother or her father, that they were always abusive, they were always toxic, they were always just telling her what to do, and they were never capable of seeing this one day she washed the dishes, or that day, or all of that, doesn't even see it. And then what happens is that many times this becomes a programming in the brain a programming in the brain that living in seeing the world through a negative lens is extremely dangerous. And of course, that doesn't mean that, men cannot have that. No, absolutely not. You can have men that may have the same thing. She's probably compromising so much about probably leaving her family and probably moving on and probably working. Many times men don't realize the amount of stress that pregnancy, childbearing, taking care of the home and trying to, take, all of that amount of stress in dealing with the kids is so much that at many times men don't even understand and think what's going on. I mean, don't exaggerate. You're not the only one. My mom was doing this, so what's the big idea? Don't realize that it's a lot for her to bear, and that he has to basically give her that support before within our traditional society, the woman basically had other women, whether it was the in-laws or whether it was her own sisters and her own mother, basically helping her, taking care of probably house maintenance or the neighbors or etc. That was the traditional family. The whole society, she had friends over that would help her do all these different things. But right now, in a society that is really an individualist society, no, everything's on her. So it becomes, let's call it a communal responsibility right now, being individual, and it becomes a very big burden, especially on those days that she probably is pregnant or probably is nursing or probably is maybe on her menstrual days and all of that. All of that needs to be taken in consideration. So for the guys, definitely they have to take that in consideration. And for the women, they also have to understand if he is the breadwinner, that then, you might not be seeing all the struggles, and especially that men are not vocal about their frustrations. They're not vocal about their frustrations. They tend to go silent whenever they are frustrated. Or, of course, if you trigger that silence, sometimes this person can burst onto you. One thing I used to always say, I look at it like this. I look at it like this, and then, I let the other people basically see it this way and say like this. Okay, you see this one right there. I know it looks like a tree, but think of it like a tree. When we are in a good terms, or when we are in good terms, we're basically standing on the roots. We're standing on the foundation, and it's very important to learn how to see these cues in reading the person's rage, how they would react and how they would relate when they are at rage. So you would say, of course, their tolerance grows tighter and tighter. Their tolerance, just like the tree, as you go up, it grows tighter and tighter. And then, of course, that's one point, this tolerance, it basically gets so squeezed that they don't have any, let's say it, any patience to basically communicate, or probably, compromise. They lose their patience, and then it gets tighter and tighter. And after that tightness, that's when you will see it bursting. Whether, of course, if you're the first person standing right in front of them, it's going to burst in your eyes. What do I mean by burst? I mean by burst, perhaps maybe going violent, that's the extreme, or perhaps maybe going violent in their words, or maybe violent in their voice tone, or maybe violent in their reaction. The worst cases would probably go as extreme as probably, starting to, break everything that's around them. Their voices go loud, etc. And guess what? You can see this rage. If you're the only person, then it's coming at you. But guess what? Wallahi al-Azim, this doesn't only just come at you. This comes at the person, him or herself, and this also affects the people that are around. If there are children around, then they too will be affected. This rage, this loss of control of our own, I guess, our own, I guess, moment of losing it all, it affects the children. That screaming, that yelling, it affects the children and they will mirror it in the future. They will mirror it with themselves, with their siblings, with their, classmates, etc. And they will basically do the exact same thing. So we need to recognize the person that's in front of us. Yes, certainly we will tell the other person, here, these are red lines. You should not go that far. But I will also tell the person that is dealing with a person like that, I want you to look at those cues. When you see that voice tone going up, when you see that person's face color, their facial color starting to change, when you see that person's probably eye starting to grow bigger, you could see this person is starting to already, probably make a fist or probably maybe get, show signs of agitation, maybe words going faster. Now this person's not hearing what you're saying. This person's not hearing what you're saying. They're just listening to themselves. They're just trying to yell out their frustration. They're not hearing anything you're saying. So might as well just slip out, wait for that moment when you are less raged, you are calmer, and they are calmer. If communication in person is not working, maybe typing it out, maybe asking ChatGPT or whatever AI to basically modify the language to make it to something easier, basically to communicate with, etc. And maybe, change the language, etc., in order to make it something that expresses what you want, but not the rage that you are speaking in, and to let basically that message get delivered in a way that is not letting the other person lose their interpretation and basically get out in that communication from being a communication to being a frustration. So this is extremely important to learn these cues, because if you don't learn these cues on the other person that's in front of you, you're going to then question, why is this person always yelling? Why is this person always, agitated, etc. Well, sometimes you may be the factor. Sometimes you may be the factor. I'm talking about whether it's a male or female. He's wondering why she's always yelling. Maybe she's always yelling because there's so much on her, so much responsibility that you probably need to help her. Maybe she's outraged because you're not giving her maybe rights and intimacy. Maybe she's going through a hormonal phase, perhaps, maybe. But maybe there's something that she's expecting from you. Maybe you just need to take over and say, you know what? Go and drink your cup of coffee or whatever it is. I'll take care of everything. Trust me, these moments when you mirror the person and you try to take out the rage and you act as the person that is understanding, trust me, it is one of those ways to bring about stability within the household. We're all human. We'll go through our moments of rage. We'll go through our moments of anger. So will you. So will I. Each and every single one of us will go through these phases. But it's about how, and especially the responsibility is more on men than women, which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made you be the man of the household. He made you be the man of the household. And what a man does is basically act as the person to lead the household towards stability, towards second, towards that tranquility, and towards al-mawadda and the rahmah. Certainly, the wife has the same responsibility, but at the end of the day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala held Adam more accountable when they both ate from the tray than Eve. That's why he said that both had done their tawbah, but of course you could see always the the discourse is directed at Adam because he is the man of the household. You should have led this right. You should have taken the right decisions. And as women, they usually follow their husbands. They usually follow the male figure and not the other way around. That's usually the case because she feels that he is her place of security. He is her place of authority. And subhanAllah, and she feels it as her own psychology. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, الرجال قوامون على النساء. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, الرجال قوامون على النساء, this isn't just to give you a legislating clause, but it's also an informative clause. An informative clause to let you know that a woman finds her security in a man that is being a leader, in a man, and the most important thing about manhood, رجال صدقوا ما عاهدوا الله عليه. صدقوا, that صدق, that honesty of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had taken upon them. Once honesty and once you live that manhood, trust me, a woman is built. A woman is built to basically want to find that man that will give her that security. Once you give her that security, and once she feels that you are a place of security, a place of honesty, that place that basically helps her, baby her babies and be the baby, be the mother of the babies, trust me, she will get calmer and calmer, and you'll be able to control the situation. You'll be able to embrace her. Embrace that woman and be that person to basically give her that embracement. And certainly, I'm not saying that as a woman, but I'm telling you, that that's even what the Prophet ﷺ himself had done when his Sayyida Aisha comes and basically breaks the plate that she was supposed to serve the Prophet ﷺ with. And remember, it's not that they had so many plates. It's okay, you could easily replace it. But the Prophet ﷺ just said, your mom, your al-Mu'mineen basically, she basically gharat. She basically got jealous and she got angry. What did the Prophet ﷺ do? He just basically collects it and tries to put it back together. All right. Did the Prophet ﷺ necessarily say, how dare you do that? And start yelling at her? No. And that's the Prophet ﷺ demonstrating what it means to be a leader. What it means to be a leader. And subhanAllah, a woman is a lot faster in compromising, and a lot faster and way easier to, I guess, get her on track. All you need is, just calm her down, give her a hug, get a nice word, a flower, whatever it is, and trust me, she'll basically calm down. I know not every single day. I know you might think of it as, oh, you're just speaking as a woman, etc. But I'm generally telling you, I'm just generally telling you and letting also the women that probably couldn't communicate to the men of what basically can calm her down. And they end up thinking that, oh, you're just exaggerating. I'm just saying it right there and saying it's a lot easier to calm a woman than you actually think. At the same time, I would say, hey, sometimes all you need to do is, what? Go, I don't know, whether it's drink a cup of coffee or whatever, I'll take care of the kids for now. That doesn't mean she has the right to do this every single day. No, sometimes, hey, listen, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. I'll do this once, twice, 3, 5, 6, 7, 10, 20, 30 times, but at the end of the day, you have some homework to do. Let's talk about this. This type of rage of yours must not ever get repeated. I understand you're probably going through a situation, but let's also work on anger management. Same thing if we're talking about a man as well. That sometimes I would say, ladies, if you know that there are 4 times, there are 4 different moments, I would always tell the women, do not discuss serious matters with your husband during these 4 moments. 1, when he's about to leave, do not say anything when he's about to leave, other than nice words, other than, a gentle bye-bye or whatever it is, but do not complain or do not make that special moment when he's about to head out to work. Do not make that a moment of anger or agitation or do not let him go out angry. Okay, that's number one. Number two, when he's coming into the house. When he's coming into the house, make sure that you first read those cues and see, is he coming in, angry, sad, what happened at work, etc. We might not, and men do a horrible job in expressing themselves. A horrible job. They don't know how to express themselves. Women, no, we can express ourselves. And in fact, we care more about expressing ourselves than actually finding a solution. To us, the solution isn't expressing ourselves. To them, to men, no, they're more rational. They want a solution and not a way to express it. For us, I just want to share my feelings, not because I want a solution, but because I just want someone to feel my pain. I just want to share my pain. I just want others to know that I'm going through this pain, and I want you to basically feel the pain that I'm going through. And that's how I would feel that other people are sharing my sentiments and other people are basically feeling and understanding the feeling that I'm going through. That's probably what she wants. Not a solution, but an expression. Okay. Now the other thing is that number two is that when he comes in from work, sorry. When he comes in, don't talk at that moment. Let him just come in, make it quiet, just figure out what's right now on his mind. Don't ask questions, what's on your mind, etc. No, they don't like to say it. You try to be smart and try to read these social cues of what he really wants, etc. Number three is during the time when he's about to eat. Make that dinner time, lunchtime, whatever it is, make it a special moment for everyone. It's not the time to get angry. It's not the time to get into any argument about something. Make it a special moment. And number four, when they're about to sleep. Hey, anyways, you don't, you basically were busy the whole day. Let that bedroom be a place of romance. Let that bedroom be a place where we get all those disputes out the door and we make it a bedroom just for a time of romance, a time of warmth, a time where we would make it a place of second and tranquility. Do not discuss at that moment, those special moments, do not discuss whatever you're angry at. You're probably maybe angry at something and you would like to say it. Can we discuss it at another time? Or is it's so disturbing, I'm so angry that I need to discuss it before this starts, I guess, bursting at the wrong moment. Perhaps you can say, there's something that is disturbing me right now. Can we talk about it now? And see when you can both agree to communicate it at which time, which day, which medium. If this person is easily annoyed by face-to-face type of conversations, perhaps maybe delay it and write it down. If writing it down doesn't help, if you're writing it in long sentences, they won't even read it. Try to make it as short as possible, especially right now with AI. Make this the shortest sentence in just two or three sentences, and in a way that expresses what I want and basically gives me my words to the point and the most important thing. And then you can look at it to see if this is basically summarized enough in order to help you express all of that. Okay, now, of course, learning these cues is extremely important, and I would say our traditional mothers actually did a way better job than today's women for a number of different reasons. I think we focus more on iPhones and we focus so much on screens that we lost our social cues in reading facial expressions and reading behavior and what it actually reflects and so forth. And we basically lost our patience in learning and taking the time to, let's say, evaluate what is going on in that person. Learning that is key to making a successful marriage. Same thing with men. Traditional men were smarter in understanding women than modern men. Unfortunately, right now, most cases that come to basically, that come for counseling, women are complaining of their husbands. More women are complaining of their husbands of using phones too much, being glued to their phones. You would think that that would be an addiction in children, but you'll be surprised that even husbands, they're so glued to those reels and glued to their phones and would not even give any, I guess, time to their wives or to their children because they're just so glued to their phones. We're coming with a lot more cases than you would actually expect. And husbands being so glued to their phones or so glued to their laptops, or even so glued that this is the worst thing, which is so glued to a gaming. The second that I see a man glued to gaming is that second that this man is not a man anymore. Wallahi al-azim. Sorry. I cannot even imagine a man addicted to gaming. That is probably the stupidest thing ever to be glued on and glued to. It's very, whatever. Let's get out of that one. Anyhow, so that being glued to the phone, many times they don't even realize it. She's trying to basically attract him. She's trying to communicate. She's trying to do this. And he's like, are you done? Are you done? Are you done? And what you're really saying is shut up. That's what she's reading. She's reading your words saying shut up. And that's when you break her. You break her. A woman is very soft and very gentle. You can easily break a woman. That's why the Prophet ﷺ said, كَسْرُهَا طَلَاقُهَا. You could easily break a woman. Do not break her, because guess what? The second that you break her, she ends up becoming sharp on you. Just picture that. You broke her. She becomes sharp on you, and she will do whatever it takes to basically soften her sharp edges on you. This is real. When women become broken, oh, they'll become really dangerous. She'll try and attempt to reduce that sharp edges on you. And she'll think of those evil ways which you did not expect. Allah, you didn't expect. You thought that you can be evil. Trust me. Women can be a lot more evil than you think.
Why?
Why? Women think of very twisted ways. Men go directly to their target. Women, they don't depend on their physical power, but because they don't have that physical power, they'll go and think of all these plans and twisted ways, which definitely a man can never think of. A man, he wants to go steal something, rob a bank or whatever it is, straight to it. But for a woman, no, she'll have all these different plans to get to it. And as a person that worked in prisons, I'll tell you, these women, when they actually did those crimes, it took them in so many details to commit that crime. But for the man, no, he went straight to it, boom, and he killed, or he probably robbed, or, straight to it. But no, she basically had a whole set of plans, a whole set of makeover to commit the whole thing.
So
Allah
more, smart than him.
I don't know if you want to call it intelligence.
What's
I guess
the
we can see it differently. I don't know if it's intelligence, but he's definitely
yes,
risking everything and he's defended on his own, I guess, physical power. But she knows that her physical power is not strong enough, so she basically uses different tactics. At
bruh?
the end of the day, is that I will say, listen, don't break her because those sharp edges will come at you. That's all I'll say. Those sharp edges will come at you. But my recommendation is while she's soft, you can easily be gentle with her because even the Prophet ﷺ said, لأنجش رويدا يا أنجش لطفا بالقوارير. What did he say? رويدا يا أنجش. أنجش, easy. Easy. And what is it? What are we going to do? Well, we're just going to be easy. We're going to be gentle on al-qawarir. What is al-qarura? Al-qarura is a flask. A flask is basically, a glass, jar or a glass, vase or whatever
Bottle.
it is. But that was even though it was a metaphor, but it was really referring to the women and the women that were basically on that caravan thing or whatever, riding on those camels. What did he want to say? What did he want to say? He wanted basically to tell you that that's why the Prophet ﷺ said that women were created from a bent rib. إِذَا قَوَّمْتَهُ كَسَرْتَهُ. They were created from this bent rib. If you attempt to fix it, you're going to break it because it's not fixing it. She was built differently. Her anatomy is different. So don't attempt to fix it because if you attempt to fix it, those sharp edges will come at you. And that's the last thing you want to do. That's the last thing you want to do. She will give you a really bad headache. So in other words, hey, try to embrace it, then break it. Try to embrace it, then break it. And Allah al-Musta'an, I think traditional men were a lot smarter in dealing with women because they had better social cues because they dealt with women directly, whether it's their sisters or their mother, etc. And they just basically had better patience. They had better patience to basically, understand that, we have to be patient. We don't have to rush. Now, number two is that women were also a lot more submissive, and it made marriages become more successful. Traditional marriages a lot more successful than modern marriages. Okay, let's see. I think we went way off what we were just supposed to be talking about, but I guess, all of that is part of al-ishra zawjiyya. Okay, let's see. So, when we're speaking about spending, are we talking about the husband status or are we talking about the wife status that is to be considered? Scholars actually debated whether it's the husband's status that is going to be considered or whether it is the wife's status that is going to be considered. But of course, majority of the scholars, like you could see the Hanafi right there, they basically said it was going to be dependent on the husband's situation. Because at the end of the day, if her status was, let's say, a middle class and he was the lower class, then certainly, just because she is a middle class, he can't afford to let her live like a middle class or an upper class person. Just because she is basically an upper class, It doesn't mean that we're going to force him because he just can't afford it. And we definitely are not going to tell him to go and borrow money in order to provide this upper class wife the status and what lifestyle she is used to. That's why, of course, the Hanafi, and you could see other scholars as well, but the ayah says لِيُنْفِقْ ذُو سَعَةٍ مِّن سَعَتِهِ. And of course, right here, the ayah was basically saying each should be spending based on their capacity, and that capacity is basically going to be this pronoun attributed to the man himself and how much is he basically capable of handling. وَمَنْ قُدِرَ عَلَيْهِ رِزْقُهُ فَلْيُنْفِقْ مَا آتَاهُ اللَّهُ. And whoever basically was given, I guess, an amount that was expanded, let's say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was giving them more provisions than other people, then spend it. And this is really important. Some people, I guess they are exaggerating in the money management. So we have to be capable of understanding that money management and what it looks like and how we do that money management in order to make sure we understand that, make sure that um, we understand where and what money management that is suitable for our family looks like. Let's see, the sister is saying, whether it's gaming or phone addiction, the reality is, yes, it's stupid, but the women won't be the one to change him. So how to make this better? I absolutely agree. Oh dear. Most men, it's not necessarily the woman that changes him. I agree. But there are, and I know many cases that it was actually the woman that changed him. And I know many, many, many cases really that women were very smart and very wise. And she was a key factor in changing the man to becoming a better person, to becoming a calmer person, to becoming this. And I know many cases. And I know many cases that those men were probably men that were addicted to probably gambling or maybe zina or maybe alcohol or maybe different things. And they became salihin with the help of their wives. I know it's not an easy thing whatsoever, and it will still be not only a challenge, but at the end of the day, our life is short. I know many times, certain addictions, I will say, what, life is short, and the implication it has on the children is too big. And I will, some certain addictions, I will say, what, just let go of this marriage because the implication it has on those children is too big to risk anything. Things like alcohol. Things like alcohol, that is too big of a challenge because it becomes something that is more than, yes, it's just, something that this person is drinking, but the children seeing their father in that state and you being afraid that, him going into a drunk state, that it might actually go out the window and he might, put his children's lives in danger, completely understand. And there are certain things that I would say, once it goes that area, you know what? It's time to leave. It's time to leave. There are certain situations that, yes, it's time to leave. And there are other situations that I would say, can you figure out a way to at least maintain the situation, but with good supervision and probably a way to find a way to at least tame down perhaps the big effects on you and the children. If not, sometimes we may exaggerate in asking the women to be patient, in asking the women to not seek divorce. Sometimes divorce is necessary for the woman's mental health and for the children's mental health, and even for the man to also learn a lesson. It is not always that we have to always encourage a sabr. Not always. Do we have to encourage a sabr? Sometimes there are certain attitudes, certain behaviors, certain addictions that may only have one solution, which is, you know what? That's their choice that they wanted to go into that addiction, but certainly I don't have to pay the price for it, and neither do the children. So there are certain things that you really have to make strong and courageous decisions to decide to leave. Okay. But, that's not necessarily, one answer fits all. But of course, how to leave, I shouldn't be necessarily, saying, okay, here's how to leave. But I'm saying in those situations that are really, let's say, caught at this conjunction of a dead end and that she has to leave, before you leave, you would have to make sure that you have at least one. We're speaking about maintenance. What you figured out the part about maintenance, about the money. Money is extremely important because it may mean another price to pay. All right. So where's the income going to come from to cover the housing, to cover perhaps the maybe food, etc., all these different things. This is extremely important. That's something that you have to figure out, whether it's a job or whether it's maybe assistance or whatever it is. You have to figure that out. But sometimes you have to weigh things to see, is the father not being present as well? Is that going to be something, is the father's presence? How important is that? It's definitely very important to the children, but in situations where the father's presence is becoming too dangerous on the kids, then in that situation, perhaps definitely, speak to a Muslim therapist. I would say speak to a Muslim therapist, and not one, but a couple, just to make sure that they are giving you a recommendation, not based on a feminist interpretation, but really based on one, the circumstance, and if there are other solutions. Sometimes marriage therapists, they can have different ideas and different experiences on how they solve those situations. So maybe talk to them, and maybe talk to a sheikh without getting yourself, at least disclosing who the names are and who you are, etc. Make it as anonymous as much as you can. Even when you do a phone call, even when you talk to a sheikh, stay as anonymous as you can. You just want to preserve your dignity and your husband's dignity and even the children's dignity in the future. And unfortunately, not all shuyukh had been trained to learn how to maintain, confidential cases stay confidential. I know that even some therapists, I've had a number of different issues with a number of different Muslim therapists, even that didn't really respect the confidentiality of certain cases. And then that becomes an issue of integrity. But at the end of the day, like I said, whether it's a sheikh or whether it's a therapist, being anonymous and keeping your matters confidential are key to your own dignity and key to your husband's dignity and your children's dignity. Keeping it as confidential as possible is extremely important. Number three, if you raise it to, let's say, a sheikh, or you raise it to, let's say, a therapist, etc., and see if there are different ways that they can probably brainstorm of different ways of finding a solution, then that would be great. If not, then you would have to, one, figure out a financial assistance or financial support, at least until you basically are safe enough to get out of this marriage. Then, of course, you need to figure out and do your homework within your area to also see a way that can make this, let's say, either whether we're speaking about reconciliation or whether we're speaking about getting out of the relationship, to make it as simple and as low case as possible. Let me explain why. because the more you get it tangled, the pricier it gets. Let me explain why. Because the more it gets tangled, you end up with your mental health, with the kids' mental health. Not only are you struggling with perhaps maybe figuring out the money, but you find yourself then getting drained with the other person trying to perhaps untangle everything, or maybe tangling everything. You're going to find yourself so drained on all ends. That's why kasuha talaquha. So I don't want you to get too drained. If you can make it simple, easy, and fast without draining yourself and draining your kids, then that's the best way. But if you are trying to retaliate and thinking that, yes, I'm going to get my justice in each and every single thing, I'll tell you, it is impossible, dear. Even if this person harmed you, it is impossible to get your right in each and every single corner. And this is a mistake that many women would do. They would think, he abused me financially, I'm going to use that, and he abused me mentally, he abused me this, and then she'll think of, this one is to cover this one, this one's to cover that one, and then she ends up herself draining herself and collapsing. So my recommendation, if you can just recognize that there are certain rights that you will not be capable of getting in this dunya, but in the akhirah, and that you want to compromise and go for what is key and just separate with the least trouble, the least drama possible, then do so. Then do so. Because the more tangled it becomes, the more it will drain you. So you just got to keep that one in mind. So when we're speaking about, I keep getting off track. Okay, let's see. Majority of the scholars actually said, so we're talking about the Maliki, we're talking about the Hanbali, we're talking about the Shafi'i. If the husband basically was, let's say, I guess, had the money, but he was the one that had chosen to not spend, and was exaggerating his money management to the point that it was getting too stingy, okay, then what happens then? Okay, certainly it becomes a debt on the husband. Okay, but here's one thing, is that sometimes it's actually hard to prove these areas of whether he was stingy or not, and it becomes hard to prove it. So I'm just letting you know there are certain cases where, should I deal with and have a life with a stingy husband, then actually end up needing to work myself and end up really, just when I thought that if I were to work, I'm going to make up, all the things, and I have my idea of what makes the fair money management and what it makes a fair spending, and then end up really costing yourself in physical power, and costing yourself probably even your kids needing to be put in daycare, and less time with you and no time with dad, etc. And then you end up basically living on the same budget that your ex was putting you in. So sometimes I see that very oftentimes happening. She was complaining about his stinginess, and then she thought that if she were to be working, that things are going to look different. And then she ended up really living on the same budget that she was living in when she was married with a stingy husband. Okay, so what I'm going to do right now, you can see right there. Hold on. What did we do? الرجوع فيما دفعهم. Okay. Because I know it's getting too late on you. What we'll do, inshallah, we'll continue hopefully tomorrow, unless my mom didn't cancel the flight. So if she didn't cancel the flight, we'll continue to, if she did cancel the flight, we'll continue tomorrow. If she didn't, I won't be doing the class tomorrow, but hopefully the day after tomorrow, and we'll be talking about what if he basically had spent certain things, and then basically she wanted, or he didn't spend certain things, and she went and actually borrowed money and expected him to basically pay it. What if he's not capable of paying? What happens then? So what about uh pregnancy, pregnancy and childbearing, covering the money that relates to that? So we'll talk about that. If not tomorrow, the day after tomorrow. So I'll let you all right now rest, inshallah. I know it was more today of me speaking my mind and experience than actually based on, the Quran and Sunnah and what we're doing it as a fiqh of finance and all of that. But, hopefully, inshallah, that will be beneficial. I would love to hear what you would think.